the challenge is the cost that is associated with starting a family in terms of your career, and the learning of how to balance life with the newly found responsibilities and the knocking effect that it has on your career. But after a while, you regroup, you re-strategize, you read again, and you start making networks, and you start moving in an upward direction. So as I moved up, I learned that there's a lot of grant writing in the process, and you need a mentorship to guide you through the process. Because if not, after a lot of hours of hard work, you find yourself reading a letter, "Dear Dr. Koza, your application was unsuccessful." And it takes a lot again to come out from that. So you need the right support structure in order for you to be able to continue trying to rise again. And that led me to a postdoc position at the NICD, where I was a part of a research team, an multi-international research team that looked at the immunological response of HIV infection. And what we noticed there, that there was this one participant who developed broadly neutralizing antibodies against different clades of HIV, which were clinical isolates. Now, at that point in time, the conversation changed, because this antibody isolated from this individual was pitched as a possible candidate vaccine. Now, in my head, I was thinking, wait, what does this mean? How are they going to move from this protein that they've generated so much knowledge into a vaccine, which has a potential to solve what was a crisis at that point in time for South Africa and globally? And that meant I identified a knowledge gap in my skill, in my knowledge, which meant that I needed to realign myself, ensure that I'm fit for purpose, and be able to stay relevant in the field. And those are the things that you encounter after working so hard in order for you to be able to continue. Now, through that process, I came across an international program in vaccinology, which the opportunity was provided by MRC. And that was a very essential program, because it sort of spoke to that knowledge gap that I did not have. And another very important element was ensuring that as you embark in these realignment programs, fit for purpose, you find yourself in an environment that is enabling and allowing you to be able to reach your goals. And it is at that point in time, I appreciate my current employer, UKZN, who gave me that environment to be able to pursue my goals. So now the question is, so where to now? What does all of this mean? It means that with constant re-evaluation and refocusing ourselves, there is room for expansion, because now I've been able to work with veterinary companies towards a veterinary vaccine, and also knowing what we have just experienced as a country in terms of COVID. We know that it has forced us to take a restock in terms of us as South African, from the skill sets point of view, our knowledge and understanding in vaccine development as a whole. So I have no doubt that the environment right now, in terms of research, in terms of vaccine development, is conducive to lead to a lot of stars that are going to rise, be in the field of vaccine development, vaccine regulation, vaccine manufacturing. And that is where I am at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Thandeka. I think the point you make around identifying personally what your knowledge gap is, it's so critical. Because I think most of us, once you complete your PhD, you actually realize how much you don't know. It's as though you need to do another PhD. So I do agree that being able to identify those gaps is critical. And I've seen actually, with all our panel members, they have multiple qualifications. So they didn't just end with getting their PhDs. And I think it resonates with those who are leaders in their sphere, that they're able to identify those gaps. One point that you mentioned, which I'm sure the audience would like for me to kind of ask some questions on, is around balancing, the stresses of being a scientist who has these ambitions and being a mother. How did you navigate that? Any nuggets for us that you want to share?
It's not an easy process. I would say that you just need to be flexible. You need to be willing to learn on the go. You try something, you fail, you pick up yourself and you try again. And you should be open to interacting with people and learning from other people's experience in terms of how is it done. And whilst doing that, be very much aware that what works for Tumi may not necessarily work for me. However, I need to be open-minded and see, based on the conversation, what it is that I can apply in my family setting so that I can progress and not have a wonderful career and no family, or vice versa, because it's very, very important.
No, thank you. My mantra is, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. So when you're a mother, you are a mother at that time. And when you're in the lab or supervising student, that's what you are at that time. You cannot have it all at the same time. Thank you so much, Thandeka. And we'll move then to our next speaker, who also is a colleague of Thandeka and myself. All of us had stints at the CSIR, and her name is Dr. Mobile Gumeda. She has a PhD in medical microbiology, as well as her postgraduate diploma in business management. She's the director at the Innovation Office, Nelson Mandela University. She's currently the director of innovation at the university. She also serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Involve Pty Limited, which is a wholly owned commercialization company of the university. She serves on a number of boards at technology and as well as business incubators, as well as serves on a number of advisory boards. Over to you, Nobile.
Thank you very much, Tumi. I'm just going to share a slide or two.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. I thought for this afternoon, I'll just show a snapshot of my journey in biotech and some of the opportunities I've had the privilege of exploring that has led me to my current role. So my path was a little unique in that I didn't study all the way to PhD initially. So I studied biotechnology at undergraduate level. And then when I completed my undergraduate qualifications, I went straight to the workforce. My first job was working as a microbiologist in a quality assurance lab. And I quickly realized that the routine nature of quality assurance probably not well suited to my temperament. And the reason I have this slide as multiple doors, the gist of what I'm trying to encourage is some people do not know exactly how they're going to apply their knowledge, and you must have the courage to explore opportunities until you find the one that is best suited. So after quality assurance was not suited, I was led to a second opportunity where I worked in R&D for a fermentation company in the R&D lab, and I thought surely R&D will be it. It's interesting enough, it's broad enough. After a while, it was interesting, but after a while, I thought, I've always had an interest in business. I thought I should explore that interest and see how far it can take. I had different opportunities in sales and marketing, and the one that's relevant to this conversation is the pharmaceutical product detailing opportunity I had at Solvay Pharmaceutical. And that also was in a field. So this is not a very inspiring story so far, but it comes together. So when I realized that's not a fit, I mean, what was most exciting about that opportunity was the fact that I was working with specialist physicians. So I was able to look up research and share that with them. That's how I added value. But literally, that was the one aspect of the position that I enjoyed. So a few years later, in that role and a few answers later, I decided to go back to university and continue with postgraduate studies. And that gave me a nice opportunity to work, to do research in various institutions, local and abroad. But what was most useful is also I had amazing mentors in both in local institutions and institutions abroad. Long story short, I ended up doing applied research at CSIR. And why that was a turning point for me is that for the first time, I found this work meaningful for me. I was now working with a research group. I have to add, it was also a very great group of individuals in that team that aimed to develop a diagnostic product for TB using aptamer technology. This was one of the main reason that this was interesting is basically in two parts. The first part is that aptamer technology itself was an emerging research area in the country at that time, which promised great opportunities for the future. The second one is that TB was a real problem worldwide and also locally, which presented an opportunity to contribute meaningfully for me. So I was all in. I envisaged myself making new discoveries and being part of a developing technology or product that will make this world a little better than what it was. I committed myself to this research and this goal, and eventually had the work paid off. I published some papers from the work, and unfortunately, that is where the excitement started to dim a bit. Because at the end of this journey, there was no diagnostic products that we had intended. And I was a little disappointed because the lab had worked so much and put so much effort in developing these aptamers with the hope that it would make a positive impact in society. And it didn't get as far as we would have wished. We didn't have a product in the market, which has led me to my current specialization, which is technology transfer. So the failure of the lab's invention to facilitate the development of a product that could enter the market made me realize the importance of all the various components involved in the translation of academic research. And one of the key influences in the commercialization of inventions from both universities and science councils is the Office of Technology Transfer. So I decided I needed to understand technology transfer. I gave up an opportunity for a postdoc and joined a graduate internship program that was then run by TIA. And this exposed me to different players in technology transfer. The secondments ranged from working with IP attorney firms, business financing companies, and technology transfer offices that had different technology focuses. So at the end of the program, I was sold. This is what I wanted to do, at least for the foreseeable future. But life hardly lays itself out that way. While I was still in the early stages of technology transfer, I was offered a position to be a program director at the National Research Foundation. And that was a little different to technology transfer, but I was managing national research funding programs for emerging research. And what that enabled me to do is to expand my skills in areas that will be of benefit in future roles. Fast forward a few years later, the perfect opportunity finally presented itself, which is my current appointment as the head of the Innovation Office at Nelson Mandela University. And by pure luck or divine intervention, the good thing is also most of the IP portfolio at the university and the inventions are related to the bioeconomy, which is my area of specialization. So this is my current home and where all my interests and skills have collided. The take home being I have had the opportunity to work in various roles in biotech, and while many of them were not well suited, they were all necessary and beneficial to my current role and certainly my future role. And I think it's best said by the quotes that I've got on this slide by Steve Jobs that sometimes you can't connect the dots looking forward, but sometimes I added, but you can definitely connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in the future. And in my words, I just would like to encourage anyone who is not certain at the beginning of their careers what exactly fits them, that they should be brave And they should not settle until they find that one thing that is best suited for them. And in closing, I'll just highlight the 3 challenges and lessons learned from my journey. The one challenge, I find the limited breadth of skills. So it's easy to specialize too quickly. And while there definitely is a case for that, you should continue to broaden your skills as much as you can. And the world of work is changing. So one skill is definitely not going to be adequate. Fear of failure is a real failure, and most of us experience it. And depending on the environment you also were raised in or were exposed to, it can really be exaggerated. There are different strategies that you can deal with that, and they've been well documented, and I encourage people to explore the ones that work for them. But the one that I definitely find works for me is to develop a longer-term perspective and totally articulate clearly in your mind what is the cost of inaction. And that usually overrides the fear very efficiently. And the third challenge was limited social capital. So not all of us have the privilege of growing up in environments where you are exposed to business and you're exposed to people in business and you're exposed to even biotechnology and people who have explored that path. So the social capital in terms of the networks, in terms of even access and what is available is not always there. So how you can facilitate that is to participate in initiatives that are related to your specific field of interest, seek mentorship to the degree that you can. And those are the 3 that I just wanted to lift up from my experience. Thank you very much. Sorry, you're muted, Chair.
Sorry, I was saying there was a comment in the chat that says, impressive speakers, truly inspiring. Let's all help connect the dots. One point you mentioned that I'd like for you to expand on is on the importance of surrounding yourself with good mentors. They always say, if you want to run a marathon, you go with others. I don't know if you just want to reflect on that.
Mm-hmm. No, I think, I learned that lesson pretty late in my career journey, but I was also lucky enough to have mentors that wanted to support and wanted to encourage. So to the degree that you can seek out mentors and people you idolize, and I have found one of my mentors, one of the greatest lessons they taught me is, if you admire someone, you admire the work that they do, and you want them to help you in that area, just write to them and just call. And that wasn't in my culture and in my socialization at the time. And it has opened more doors than I could have ever dreamt of. So if you don't have access to them where you are, just write and just call. You'll be surprised. A lot of people are looking for opportunities to support.
No, that's really a great takeaway. Indeed, people are always willing to help. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Mobile. Our next speaker is Dr. Nankland Lamzila. She holds a PhD in medical biochemistry from the University of Stellenbosch. She has been the head of biotechnology. She's been the head of the biotechnology department at the National Bioproducts Institute since 2012. The NBI Biotechnology Department manufactures in vitro medical device diagnostic reagents and kits like monoclonal antibodies that recognize the malaria protein and the hepatitis B antigen. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Nhlanhla.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be part of this conversation, and I'm honored to be among these great women, starting from the previous speakers and the current session as well. Yeah, and I'm very happy to share my story and my journey through my career. I'll try and share my screen. Or otherwise I can just speak through it if that is okay. Speak through my slides.
Are you back to share your slides? You just need to click on the share screen button, but if
Yeah.
you can't, that's fine. You can speak to them.
Can you see it now?
No. For you to talk through it. Okay, something is happening now. Yeah, we can see it.
You can, okay. Yeah, so as Dr. Dumi has said, I work for the National Bioproducts Institute, and I lead a team of technical experts who have extensive experience in biotechnology applications. I participated, if I can just go back to where I started my work career, I participated in HIV research while studying at my honors at UKZN, and I worked for the Medical Research Council at the MRC HIV Prevention Unit. My PhD thesis at the University of Stellenbosch was on the effect of non-tuberculous mycobacteria on tuberculosis infection. And I was also a postdoctoral research fellow at Technology Innovation Agency's Institute for Diagnostic Research. In my professional journey, I came across many people who encouraged and supported me at all institutions where I obtained my academic training and those institutions where I worked. And I stand in the shoulders of all those people as a result. Then in terms of my journey and about where it started, well, as a young 12-year-old, while watching a documentary on heart disease, I was inspired when I saw a man who was describing, he seemed to have a deeper knowledge of the heart condition and explaining what was really happening. And he seemed to come up with solutions or try to find solutions about the heart disease. So at the moment, as a 12-year-old, I didn't understand much English, but I could tell what was happening. And I saw his title was MD, PhD. And I said to myself, one day that's going to be my title. So that's where the passion all started. But this passion for biotechnology and science grew even further when I learned about the devastation that was caused by HIV in the 1990s. And I also wanted to be part of the solution. Then thereafter, I tried to get into university. My points, I wanted to do I wanted to study for medicine, but I didn't get enough points to get into medical school. So I ended up studying BSc. I enrolled for BSc. Then from then on, I studied biochemistry and chemistry, majored in those two, and went on to study honors. So after graduation, I looked for employment, and there it was quite difficult to find a job, and I ended up volunteering at companies like Unilever, where they ended up giving me short-term contracts where I started working as a technician. So that was great for me. That was a great start for me, and I didn't stay at home for a very long time as a result after studying. And then thereafter, I went while I was working at Unilever, even though I was getting a good salary and all of that at the end of the month, but I could see that my life was just not interesting. It was going to stay the same for a very long time, and there was I didn't feel challenged. And I thought, okay, well, let me try and go and work at a university as well. So looked for jobs at UKZN at the medical school, and I found through a professor known as Neva Kaleni. So he introduced me to HIV pathogenesis program, and that's where I actually started working at HPP, or doing that HIV research. So that started and opened a lot of doors for me, and I got inspired to study even further. And when thereafter, after HPP, I went to the Medical Research Council, and I started, that's where I actually first bought my first car, and my life was looking, I was progressive. And then I decided that I wanted to study even further and do my master's and PhD. And I ended up leaving the full-time employment at MRC, and I went to Stellenbosch. And that's where everyone was saying that I must have been crazy, thinking that leaving a paying job to go and study. But I had a stipend which was very little from what I was used to getting as a salary. But I took that journey, and I had to sacrifice a lot of things as a result. Then at the end, it was actually quite difficult, because coming from a family where you have to support your mom and your brothers as well, if you have younger siblings, it was quite difficult. But for me to go back and study full time. So, but it did happen, and by God's grace, I managed to complete all of that. So I realized that in life, your mission is never clear, and it may seem to evolve many times, but it's important to be purpose-driven and be grounded in faith. So that's what helped me through my journey as well. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm sure many people who are listening in resonate with your story of particularly being a young Black female in South Africa, studying the sciences, wherein indeed we have this desire to achieve all these academic qualifications, yet, as you say, it comes with a sacrifice. And yet you have what is called Black tax. Yes. That you need to, and I think many of us have had to go through that, but we emerge, and we emerge, a lot stronger. I just want you to reflect on, you mentioned how you struggled to get employment post your honors. I always say that for us in the sciences, like a basic degree is a PhD. Before then, it's really difficult to get into any space. And maybe if you can just share some learnings from that experience of having to, defer your plans of studying your master's and your PhD to go and work just as you were, building up. Maybe just share some experience there.
Yeah, that was quite a difficult period as well, because the kind of employment I would get also would not be sufficient, or the salary I would get was also not enough to sort of live by, and it was quite difficult. And I realized that in order for me to improve and to be more effective in what I do, I have to go back and actually further my studies. My supervisor, my honor supervisor, Dr. Feniki Pila, she always used to tell us in the lab that you are not the tail, but you are the head. So that's what you should strive for, to be the best you can be. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was quite inspiring for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nhlanhla. We've got two more speakers, and I see we're running out of time. We're really enjoying this conversation. but we should be able to definitely hear from both of you. The next speaker is Ms. Effie Udise. She is a seasoned life science strategy and business development professional with a passion for health innovation and improving access and solutions for healthcare for the underrepresented population. She has almost 10 years of experience in the biopharmaceuticals and healthcare technology space, and her global career has spanned 3 continents across Europe, Africa, and the US. Over to you, Effie.
Thank you so much. Hope everyone is doing well. It's a pleasure to be invited to speak with AfricaBio today, especially with such an incredible lineup of women. I've learned so much just hearing the 4 speakers that have gone me before speak. I think the conference and theme this year is very timely, especially given the focus on healthcare over the past year with the COVID-19 pandemic. So definitely a pleasure to be a part of this session. So I'm just going to share my screen and let me know once you can see it, please. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I thought I would start off with just taking you through my journey so far, which some may describe as quite unconventional, but I would say that all things have definitely worked in my good so far, and I hope you'll be inspired. So I was born and raised in Ghana. I then studied in Lome, Togo for a few years, where I attended high school, and this is basically where I'll say that I spent most of my primitive years in. Living in Togo was also my first time being exposed to Francophone West Africa, which for me was very important because I gained an understanding of some of the cultural differences, which has now been very important in my role at 54 Gene, where I'm the Director of Strategy and Business Development, and also in other roles I've had in Africa and in the pharmaceutical field. So I studied pharmacology at university because growing up, I really had a passion for science. I wanted to really understand why drugs worked, how they elicited a response in the body. During my time at UCL, I focused on neuroscience due to my fascination with the brain. And this really gave me a strong scientific grounding. But when I was studying, I realized that I loved the science, but I also really had a passion to really understand how I could merge science with the business. I wanted to know how I could actually get drugs into the hands of patients, you know, how drugs are marketed, what kind of policies determine how patients will get drugs. So I then decided to study a master's at the London School of Economics around health policy, which definitely gave me the overall experience across policy, regulation, and strategy that I was really looking to acquire. Following my master's at LSE, I began working for a consultant analytics company called Decision Resources, where I served pharma and biotech companies. This was my first real job and really opened my eyes to the commercial side of the industry. In this role, I learned to quickly assess a market, to identify what made a drug successful through trials, and also really how to forecast the market potential of drugs, which was a very important skill set for that point in my career. After about 4 years at Decision Resources, where I focused mostly on the oncology markets, I got a chance to join Biogen in their European headquarters in Switzerland as a commercial operations manager. This was an incredible role for me because I had moved on from the consultant side where I was serving pharma companies to an in-house role where for the first time I was within a pharmaceutical company and I could really be closer to the drugs, be closer to the products and the strategy and really understand what was driving some of these decisions using data, which I had been doing in my other job. Somewhere along the line, I decided to pursue education again because as most of my fellow panelists have said, once you're in this industry, you just have to continue learning. So I got the chance to pursue a full-time MBA at Dartmouth School of Business with a scholarship. And that's when I moved to the US. The latter part of my career following my MBA, and also a bit before then, have been focused still on pharma and biotech, but more directly supporting African pharma companies and African health technology companies such as Mpho and 54 Gene, where I currently am now. So how did I get here? I'll say that my career and successes to date would not have been possible without, hard work and really making it a point to try and get as much experience in different geographies as possible, taking some risks and continued educational learning. And here I have 6 things that I would say have really, really helped me get to where I am today in my career. Firstly, I'll say a passion for science and healthcare. And that's something that I've heard throughout all the panelists' conversations so far. We're all here for a reason. We all love the science, but most importantly, we know and we can see how the science can solve healthcare problems. Hard work and tenacity. You cannot be in this field and be lazy. You cannot be a scientist. You cannot work in the lab. You cannot work at the pharmaceutical industry and not have hard work, grit, determination, and tenacity. So I think this is definitely a very important character skill to have. Also, just finding mentors, networking, and learning from others. As someone said before I came to speak, when you really find someone that you admire, make it a point out to reach them. And I definitely I have many examples of how that has helped me grow in my career. I'll say that for me specifically, just making it a point to gain experience in Europe, working in London and Switzerland, gain experience in Africa, working in Ghana and Nigeria, and also gain experience in the US as well has really helped me to understand how different healthcare systems work, and the dynamics between different pharmaceutical markets. I also say trying new things and taking risks. Before I joined Pharma, most of my career had been just in the pharma side. And when I joined Pharma a couple of years ago, that was when I had moved for the first time into digital health, which was quite new. But it was an incredible experience. And I feel like the knowledge that I gained there with regards to technology and the intersection of tech and healthcare has definitely helped me in other roles in my career, and even the role that I'm doing now with 54 Gene. And then finally, I will say that understanding my skill gaps. So I went to business school because I realized that I had been in an industry for about 6 years, but I had more to learn with regards to financial analysis, building leadership skills, and just also learning more about the US healthcare system, which is a big healthcare system that I think a lot of people struggle to understand. Also, continuously learning from my mistakes, I think, is something that has definitely helped me to come this far in my career. So these are the 6 things that I'll leave you with. And I'm definitely happy to connect. I'm very passionate about mentoring the youth, and please feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. I mean, there's definitely core messages that are coming through with every speaker, right? Understanding your skill gap, mentorship, hard work, and it's clearly consistent. Thank you so much for that. We'll take our next speaker, Ms. Sindisiwe Mutwa. Her research interests are in materials chemistry, nanotechnology with the focus on environmental remediation. She is a South African Chemical Institute postgraduate student representative. Her research study resulted in 3 peer-reviewed journal articles, 1 published international conference presentation, and 1 national conference presentation. Thank you. Over to you. Do we have Ms. Sindisiwe on the panel? No, I don't see her. This gives me an opportunity, Effie, to ask you a question. I mean, I think very similar to one of our speakers earlier, who again worked in different geographies, etc. I'm hearing this come through quite a lot. I think a number of you, if not all of you, have had some type of international exposure. And I fully agree with you that it is so critical. Can you maybe just share with us what are some of the nuggets, that you took from operating in these different, environments, and what can you then share with those young scientists who are wrapping up their PhD and are very nervous about, I got my training in Africa, am I going to do well in another lab in the US, etc. Maybe some encouragement around that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I think that's a great question. The first thing I would say is just understanding the different cultures, because in this industry, we're always working in a team. I would say that the science, healthcare, and pharma industries are one of the most cross-functional industries that you would come across. So really understanding how to work with different cultures was the first thing. Something else that I think is very important is when you enter a new market is really to understand the different policies, reimbursement structures, and regulations there, because they're so incredibly different. So the way you launch a drug in the US is very different from the way you may launch a drug in the EU versus in Africa. So really understanding the policies that are in place that could potentially, make or break the launch of a drug is very important. as well. But I'd also say that understanding that technology ecosystem, you know, that healthcare is becoming very, very tech focused, which is a good thing, but not all the different, I guess, geographies have the same level of infrastructure and technology. So really understanding what is available in that market. For example, in Africa, we're great when it comes to mobiles. So mobile health works very well here. They may not necessarily work as well in the US, but something else like using a cloud may work better in the US. So understanding the technology infrastructure in that particular geography and how you can then use that to connect the dots within the healthcare and pharma industry, I think is very important.
No, thank you. In the 5 minutes we have left, I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to just reflect on that point before we wrap up. Please just unmute yourself or see you just come up. No, I'm not seeing anyone come through. I just want to thank all of you. Really, I've thoroughly enjoyed, you know, this session. As I was saying, there are key messages that I've taken from this session. The first is around purpose. You know, that you really have to be a purpose-driven person as you do science, because you will face those challenges that may get you to, you know, choose to either continue or not continue. So being very clear on why you do what you do is quite critical. I think something else that's coming through quite strongly is the need for a diverse skill set, that it's not enough to just, you know, have your PhD. And we're seeing it in a number of technologies, that there's a convergence of technologies. We're now talking One Health, right? So you can't just only do human health. You need to dabble a bit also in veterinary and understand that. Very important, I think, also coming through is the importance of mentors. And even though it may not be formal, but having those individuals that you're able to pick up the phone and have them guide you. And I'm sure many of you in your individual spaces are mentors to young and upcoming scientists. So I just want to thank all of you. And indeed, as per the earlier comment, I think Dr. Konji, I used to call her Aus Konji because she was like a sister to me. She would be very proud of all of you. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Please do have a wonderful day further.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and just a greeting to everyone. I thank you, BioAfrica and the organizers for allowing me this graph to show the highs and the lows, and I navigated through my career. So it was in that biochemistry lecture at undergrad where you are introduced to DNA and proteins, and I learned that as much as DNA contains all the genetic information, it cannot be encoded unless proteins are there. So at that point in time, proteins to me became cool molecules to work with. But soon after postgrad, I realized that there are a lot of challenges in working with proteins, in a sense that there are a lot of failures in terms of protein expression, and it's very hard to navigate around them. But like with everything in life, if you press on, you don't give up, you are consistent, you read, you do submit. So, and that was the point in my PhD work when I was able to crystallize the structure of GST. That was an enzyme that I was working with. And at that point in time, this was a marvelous achievement for me, given that structural biology was a field that was dominated by males. And also I could claim to be a structural biologist or one in training because I had data to show for that. But soon after that, it was time to start a family. Now, the challenge is that in our career, nobody tells you the cost that is associated with starting a family in terms of your career and the learning of how to balance